All right, learner. Ever feel like you're just like constantly playing catch up in this crazy business world?
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. Well, today we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into the playbook of someone who turned hustle, I mean serious hustle, into an empire. Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
And forget courtside seats at the American Airlines Center. We're talking front row access to his business wisdom straight from his book, How to Win at the Sport of Business.
And what I find so fascinating is that Cuban really doesn't shy away from what you call it, the unconventional path he took.
You got that right.
Get there.
This isn't some story about like a kid who was born with a silver stock portfolio in their hand.
Right.
Cuban's early career, it reads more like a what will he try next kind of adventure.
Mm.
Selling powdered milk,
Yeah.
check.
Been there.
Dabbling in TV repair franchises,
Exactly.
check.
But-
And you know what, learner? This early hustle really like resonates with that getting paid to learn mentality that Cuban is always talking about.
Totally.
Something I think you can appreciate.
Absolutely. Yeah. It speaks to the idea that even those seemingly random jobs, like you can find hidden lessons in those
Right.
valuable experiences
Yeah.
that might not be like obvious at first.
Right.
And Cuban wasn't just clocking in and out. He was constantly absorbing that knowledge,
Yeah.
building those skills, optimizing every experience.
And it's almost like he had this internal radar, for opportunity.
Totally.
Always scanning, like, what's next? What's the next big thing? Which, come to think of it, isn't that kind of what you're doing right now? Learner, by like diving into this deep dive, you're actively seeking out knowledge, staying ahead of the curve.
Precisely. And that insatiable curiosity, that's like a hallmark of Cuban's journey. Take, for instance, his move to Dallas.
Yeah.
A total turning point for him. He lands there, practically broke,
Yeah.
sleeping on a friend's couch, driving a car that, I don't know, probably rattled more than it rolled.
Okay, but I have to admit, picturing like a future billionaire, right, cruising around in some beat up clunker, probably with holes in the floor. I mean, that's priceless.
I know.
But here's where it gets interesting. Amidst all that chaos of starting over, Cuban has this like light bulb moment. He falls head over heels completely in love with the world of PCs.
Yeah.
And not just as like a gadget, but as a game changer. Like he sees it.
He sees the potential.
Yes.
And that's the spark, right?
Yeah.
That ignites the Cuban we know today. It's no longer just about getting paid to learn. It's about focusing that hustle on something big, something with real potential.
And that, my friend, is where Micro Solutions, which is Cuban's first tech venture, explodes onto the scene.
Talk about a game changer.
I know, right? So picture this, right? It's the mid-'80s. Personal computers, they're just starting to become like a thing.
Yeah.
And Cuban, with this like newfound passion for this whole tech scene, he decides, you know what, I'm going to launch my own company.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the Cuban curveball, right? He names the company Micro Solutions in like 30 minutes.
Wow.
30 minutes. I mean, talk about decisive action.
Right. It really makes you wonder, was that like a stroke of genius?
Yeah.
Or was it just Cuban, like completely refusing to get bogged down in the weeds, overthinking it?
Overthinking, exactly.
It's a question worth thinking about, learner. How much does all this analyzing really help? And at what point are you just getting in your own way?
Such a good point. And that just go for it energy.
Yeah.
It was in everything Cuban did at Micro Solutions. Like take his first big client, for example, right?
Yeah.
He basically said, hey, if this software doesn't like completely knock your socks off, full refund, no questions asked.
Wow.
That's confidence right there.
Absolutely.
But it's also about really like understanding, would you say, really understanding and addressing what your customers actually need.
Yeah, 100%. Cuban was laser focused on delivering, real tangible value from day one.
Yeah.
And this wasn't about, these super complex business plans or market projections.
Yeah.
This was about like rolling up your sleeves,
Yeah.
Getting your hands dirty and proving yourself, out there in the trenches.
Speaking of trenches, this is where it gets really it really highlights Cuban's like scrappy beginnings,
Yeah.
because he was all in on sweat equity, like
Yeah.
pouring every ounce of effort, and yes, literal sweat, into building Micro Solutions from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
No investors,
Wow.
no handouts, just pure hustle.
Which is not really the typical startup story you hear nowadays.
Like it's almost counterintuitive in a world that's obsessed with, securing funding. But Cuban really argues that this whole like bootstrapping mentality, that's what built the company's resilience.
Yeah.
Every decision they made, every dollar they earned, it was a result of their hard work.
It's like that saying, like, you always want what you can't have.
Right.
By choosing to, like, forego that easy money,
Yeah.
Cuban and his team, they were they were hungrier. They were more resourceful, you know?
Yeah.
They had to be innovative, and I don't just mean in their product, but in how they actually ran their entire business.
Exactly. And that resourcefulness was put to the test in a way that I don't think Cuban could ever anticipated. Because he
Oh.
tells the story in the book about discovering that his secretary was embezzling money.
And to make matters even worse, the bank essentially told him, tough luck, not our problem.
Oh, man. Talk about a punch to the gut, right? Like, I would totally understand if he just spiraled, right? Like,
Yeah.
anger, resentment. But that's not Cuban.
No.
He talks about how that experience, as awful as it was, actually taught him a really valuable lesson, one that I think goes way beyond the whole business world.
It does, yeah. And that lesson, how I see it, it's like, it's about, it's about realizing that there's no point in dwelling on the past, you know?
Right.
Instead of letting that anger just consume him, Cuban was like, you know what? I'm going to use this. I'm going to channel this energy into moving forward.
Yeah.
He realized action, not resentment. That was the key.
Yeah.
That was the only way to really overcome that setback.
Resilience at its finest. But amidst all of the highs and lows of building and running microsolutions, something else is happening, right?
that.
Cuban's business philosophy, it starts to crystallize. He's developing these core beliefs, these like what we call Cubanisms today,
Right, right.
that he's now famous for. And this is where we really start to unpack those Cubanisms, right? Like
Yeah.
there's almost those counterintuitive principles that helped him just like totally crush it in the business world.
Exactly.
One of my favorites, and I think this one really like speaks to anyone with that entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
is his whole thing about how you only have to be right once.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about that one?
It's so Cuban, right?
I know, right?
It's bold, it's a little cheeky, but there's this, like, deeper truth there.
Totally.
Like, just think about it, learner. How often do we find ourselves, like, frozen? Because we're terrified of making the wrong move.
Oh, all the time.
Of failing.
Yeah.
And Cuban's like, nah, forget that. Like, he flips the script. He's basically saying, you don't need this, like, perfect track record. You just need that one win.
Yeah, one win, yeah.
That changes everything.
It's almost like he's giving you permission to, like, experiment more,
Yeah.
to take more risks, knowing that, yeah, okay, you're going to have some missteps along the way.
Totally.
But that one breakthrough could make all the difference.
Exactly.
And speaking of taking risks, Cuban, he's got some pretty strong opinions on how you should treat your customers, which is something I know you're all about.
Big time.
And this is where it gets kind of interesting because, okay, so he has this famous line, right? Treat your customers like they own you.
Right.
But then he'll turn around and say, don't listen to your customers.
Yeah. That's Cuban for you.
I know. So which one is it, Mark? Can you clarify? But he doesn't leave us hanging.
He doesn't.
He actually explains this whole like paradox.
Yeah.
With like this nuance that's so important, especially if you're building a business.
And it boils down to this, right? Cuban, he really does believe in, deeply listening to your customers, like understanding their needs, their pain points. What are they looking for?
Yeah.
But he also like throws out this word of caution. Don't let those voices completely dictate your vision.
So it's not about just like, I don't know, like blindly following every little customer whim that comes your way. It's more about like using that feedback to inform how you're innovating.
Yes.
Not stifle it.
Exactly. Because as Cuban points out, customers, they can tell you what they wish was better, right?
Right.
What they want to see improved. But they can't always see what's actually possible.
Right. What's next?
Exactly. And this actually ties into like another one of Cuban's like core beliefs. And it might seem kind of obvious on the surface,
Okay.
but it carries a lot of weight coming from him. And that's sales cure all.
Right. And it's like, this is coming from someone who built their entire like empire on cold calling,
Right.
door-to-door sales, like grinding it out to make micro solutions happen.
Exactly. This isn't like some motivational poster on his wall.
Right.
This is like the core of his being.
Exactly.
And it just underscores everything we've been talking about this entire deep dive, right? Cuban's relentless focus on action.
Yeah.
On getting things done. Because it really doesn't matter if you've got this amazing idea, the best product in the world, if you can't actually convince someone to buy into it, right?
So true. So, learner, if there's one thing, one key takeaway from how to win at the sport of business, it's this. Be curious. Be adaptable. Hustle. I mean, really hustle. harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
And never, ever, ever underestimate the power of sales.
Love it. Perfectly put. But as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this final thought. You know how Cuban's a huge, huge proponent of, inventing the future,
Oh, yeah.
disrupting industries,
Yeah.
creating something totally new? But
Yeah.
what if that's not really your main strength?
Oh, interesting.
What if your superpower, learner, is actually recognizing those big, game-changing innovations early on?
Oh, interesting.
Spotting the potential before anyone else even sees it.
Oh, I like that.
Is that not another way to win at this whole sport of business thing?
Yeah.
Cuban might say, invent the future, but could you be out there recognizing it?
Right.
Becoming an early adopter,
Yeah.
investing in someone else's brilliant idea, something to think about as you're, navigating your own path.
Right, because there's more than one way to win the game.
Exactly. And sometimes, the most strategic move is knowing, what your strengths are, even if they don't match up perfectly with how someone else defines success.
So